Yeah. And this also happened with I'm notorious for losing my glasses. Notorious. And Bonnie's like, why don't you just ask Jocelyn, Kitty, and David, who are the three house fairies who I've gotten to know, if they wouldn't mind finding them for you. So I did, and I left. I was going to the grocery store. I went to the grocery store without my glasses. When I came home, I was expecting them to be on the counter if they found them or whatever. I No glasses, could not find them anywhere still. The next morning, I got up to make myself coffee and eat breakfast, and I went to go sit at the dining room table, and hanging on the fruit bowl in the middle of the table were my glasses. Now, I would never have hung them on the fruit bowl. And yeah, I live with my parents, or I should say they live with me now. And I asked my mom, did, did you put my glasses here? Nobody in the house put my glasses there. So, of course, I had to ask Jocelyn, and Jocelyn found them for me again and put my glasses on the fruit bowl for me. So that was the second wow moment. And there's been many wow moments since then.
Yes, and many children see them too. About 75% of the world's children today are being born with etheric vision. And when your children talk with people and have daydream playmates, the chances are they are actually speaking to some of these people, because these angels or angelic forces, or nature spirits as they're often called, will often make themselves seen.
Whatever it is, it looks every bit like a fairy and very little like anything else.
But seriously, it kind of looks like a fairy. Just kind of doesn't look like your standard mall.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
But I wasn't going to make this video until I looked a little bit closer and I realized after it lands behind my bench, it disappears. It just vanishes. And in fact, I went outside to look, to try to find it, to see if it was trash, to see if it was a bug, to see if it was a leaf, like trying to figure out what it could be, and it was gone. It just vanished.
What's that? Yeah. What's what? Yeah, look. Right up there. Insect or something.
Is that an insect? Let's have a look. What is it?
I don't know. Oh my god!
Ugh.
What happens to people who cut down fairy films?
Did you see it? Huh? Did you see it?
Yeah, me and him saw it.
What'd you see?
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard?
The paranormal is real. Is it? The paranormal is real.
Welcome everybody tonight to Fascinating Fae. Tonight, we're extremely fortunate to be joined by two guests. This will be my first double interview, so I'm really excited about this. Tonight we have Bonnie from North Carolina and Therese from San Diego. So we've pretty much got, the whole continental US represented here and a bit of North America because I'm up in Canada. We're going to be having a really interesting conversation tonight. Now, for those that have been listening to the show, my own understanding of the topic of fairies and the Fae is evolving as we sort of unpack these stories together. And one of the reasons I'm really excited to talk with Bonnie and Therese tonight, well, before I get there, I just want to give a quick nod out to Therese for setting up this call and for really diligently staying in communication with me now for several months to bring this call to fruition. So I really appreciate that. What I was about to say is we're going to hear a really interesting set of storytelling punctuated by this really interesting process that both Bonnie and Therese are undergoing currently of direct communication with the Fae, not unlike many of the people that I've spoken to. And so I'm really, really interested to hear about where this all eventually goes. But before we get there, what we're going to do is we're going to allow Bonnie to start by telling us her first experience with a fairy. So Bonnie, how I like to do things here is I just want to remind you, we're not to convince anyone of anything at Fascinating Fae. This is just here to collect amazing stories. You're totally given the mic with lots of time here. So as much time as you need to fully get into your first encounter, feel free to give the context, tell us what you were doing, and then if you would be so kind, just walk us into your first encounter and what has branched out from there.
Okay, well, that sounds great. The one thing I wanted to make sure I cover here is a couple of points that set the tone and the way that we communicate with them from the very beginning. But I'm going to tell a little story, and I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, which has a little bit of a savanna feel to it. We have a lot of beautiful architecture and a whole lot of Spanish moss and beautiful trees. And I was running around one day taking pictures of houses and trees and all kinds of things. And I do that a lot. And when I got home and I loaded my pictures into the computer and I looked at one of them, and it was a 3-story white home that looked pre-Civil War, possibly. And there was a gigantic tree that went actually up above the 3rd floor, and there was a balcony there. And I looked at it and I saw, oh my gosh, there's a kid in that tree. There's a kid who looks like he's about 6 or 7. And I thought, oh, he is going to be in so much trouble, because all I could think of was he had gotten on the balcony and climbed out onto the tree, and he was sitting on a really strong, hefty branch. But the more I looked in, the more then I realized he wasn't really wearing the average kind of clothing. He had something on, and then I realized he was not really a kid. And then it just hit me all of a sudden, that's a fairy. And I thought, oh my gosh, because he was close to human sized for like a 6-year-old. And that's not what we've been trained to think of, I mean, in all of our stories and everything growing up. And I just looked at it and I thought, that's like a small human being. And so it was fascinating. And then I started looking a lot of other places, and I was able to take a lot more photographs. I was in a job where I was able to pretty much do that all day long on the internet and then outside in the woods. And I started taking lots and lots and lots of pictures. And then one day it was like around 5 in the afternoon, and I was back on my patio, and I just looked around and I said, is there a fairy out here that I could talk to? Is there a fairy somewhere around here that I could talk to? And someone just said, yeah, me. And I've been clairaudient. That's another thing. Everybody has that ability, but not everyone is able to access it. And so what I heard was, yeah, me, in my head. And I said, okay, who are you? And she said, well, my name is Susan. And I said, hi, I'm Bonnie. And then she said, well, I know you really don't know where I am and you can't see me, so that makes it difficult. So we had a conversation, and then she said, well, why don't you take a picture of me? I said, okay, great. And she said, give me about 5 minutes because I want to change into a white dress, because the brown dress I was in will just blend right in. You won't be able to see me very well, even on film. I said, okay. So I came back out, and she kind of directed me as to where to aim the camera, which was my phone, and I got the shot, and wow, wouldn't you know, she was right there in a white dress with long black hair, standing in between 2 leaves, and she's about 1.5 inches tall. And we started having a conversation. And so we got to be very good friends. And this is 4 5 years ago.
Longer than that.
Yeah, longer than that, really. Yeah, that's true. It is longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we talked, I mean, it was kind of like, you tell me about you and I'll tell you about me and we'll figure out what's going on here. And I got the feeling that she already knew a lot about me and that other Fae in the area already knew a lot about me, but I didn't even, that didn't bother me at all. And so but one of the things I really want to stress here that helps me to understand exactly what fairies are and who I was talking to. Um, During our conversation, I sat up there one day and I said, well, tell me, do you speak Gaelic? Because, we've always thought, okay, fairies come from Ireland. And the old Celtic languages are what they would be speaking. And I do have a friend who's from Ireland, and her family speaks really, really hard to understand with an Irish accent. And the Gaelic is, wow, it's amazing. But her reaction wasn't at all what I thought it would be. I said, do you speak Gaelic? And she said, why would I speak Gaelic? Just like that. And she said, I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. I said, oh, okay. And I thought, well, that makes perfect sense. And I didn't really talk to her about anything other than like, how do you live? Where do you live? And these were all just basic questions. But she started letting me know that humans have completely, totally inaccurate ideas about what fairies are. And that's been because we've made up so much stuff. And so when when we were talking about the way humans draw fairies and picture fairies as being in, of course, wings, and they have these long, beautiful, silken, twinkly, glittery gowns, and their hair is all up, and they look just like they're out of a Broadway play or something. And I said, well, you're just like you're a person, and you're just wearing this dress, which looks really beautiful, but um, what about those? And I showed her one that I had on my phone, and she was just sort of like not laughing as much as kind of like, oh dear, like that. And she said, let me tell you something. If they could only see, all humans could just see what my life is like, that most of the time I have two kids, and one of them I'm always running after, and half the time I've got my hands up to the elbow in dishwater doing dishes. And I'm pretty much your average, what you would call, I guess, a housewife, except I'm also an artist. And she said, we are very much like human beings in many ways. And that's the one thing I think is going to be very difficult for us to convey, that there are very many mystical beings and spiritual beings who can look like a fairy, I suppose, but her attitude was that this is going to be something that's a big surprise to humans, because I live in a home under the ground with my husband and with my two kids, and we get up every day and we do what we do, and I take care of the home, and I take care of my I teach meditation classes, and it just got to where I realized that everything I've ever thought about, like Tinkerbell, that's totally wrong. And that there are a lot of things about the Fae that make a lot of sense, because what they really are is another civilization, just like us in so many ways. But they've been hidden over many years because of the fact that at one point we were not very nice. And that's the nicest way I can put it. But spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, in its wisdom decided to hide them. And so they're kind of like with us, but just a step across the line. So they live in our dimension. They experience our weather. They experience the things we do. Um, they see us perfectly well, but we can't see them. So they kind of are sharing everything with us, but at the same time, they have to put up with us, and we do a lot of things that are either stupid or destructive. And it's really odd. Eventually, it gets to where you can really handle that idea that could be standing right next to you, but you can't see them. And that's exactly how they are. And there are many different types of the Fae, like there are many different types of human beings. For the most part, I would say if you were going to single out the ones who are the mythical, magical ones, that might be 10%, maybe not even that much, but most of them are small human beings. And that's the one thing that Therese and I both came to understand over a long period of time. And the more that we did understand it, the more we realized how important it is for our civilization, the way it is now, to aspire to the way they live. And you're right, when you mentioned that the Fae are evolved, oh my gosh, are they ever? And they really have the kind of lifestyle and the kind of beautiful spirit that I think human beings in general have longed for and have aspired to as long as we've been on the planet. And unfortunately, we have not done a very good job of getting there. So um, that is what I could put together as far as my experience. And on and on. Now I have quite a few good friends, and I mean people who will come into my apartment and watch um, some videos with me and talk to me and listen to me, and I listen to them. And quite often, it's I find myself wishing that I was either a fairy or they were a human, because there's such a close connection there. But what we're really doing is trying to make it so that people are not in so much shock that they won't really understand or accept the day that comes when eventually we will be able to see them. And that is going to come. I don't know if it'll be in our lifetimes. I hope so. I really do. And so after that, I can say that Therese came into my life and we kind of clicked, and then the rest is Therese. Take it away.
Therese, just before we get there, and I'm gonna definitely get there. Thank you for your patience. I do really appreciate you allowing yourself to go second. Very magnanimous move to do that. Bonnie, just wanted to thank you for that. Incredible dialogue and storytelling. And just before we transitioned over, something that happened in the pre-conversation that I feel is worth mentioning before we get there is you saw your fairy in 2019, and so did I, which is very interesting. And it makes me wonder if also my guest Linda from episode 7, Linda's Not Lying, she and I saw our fairy on the same day in 2019. Like I'm on the coast of British Columbia and she's down in like the coast of the east coast of the United States. And we both saw our fairies in remarkably similar formats too. And so I just think there's something about 2019 that it just has come up more than once, and I thought I'd mention that.
Very true. Let me make one point here. When I saw the little boy in the tree, that was actually 2013.
Oh, I see.
But then after that, I was taking pictures of so many, and then it wasn't for probably about 2015 that I actually met Susan. But on 2019 was when Therese and I got together, and that's actually a real hallmark for us because, as you will find out after she speaks, what we were brought together for pretty much is to tell all of this to everyone. So it still has a real resonance as that particular date. And I would not doubt a lot of other groups and people have seen or started some kind of a fairy communication in 2019 as well.
Okay, this is why it was coming up for me to speak that, and thank you for helping that understanding, because I was like, why do I need to say something about 2019 before we get to Therese? And now I understand. So thank you for that beautiful segue.
Sure.
So Therese, if you could take it from there, please, that would be really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Sure. So with my experience, I met Bonnie online, believe it or not, through a group that we were both in, that talked about extraterrestrials and just all the things that we were into. And we became friends. And during the whole COVID era where everyone was worried about their health and things like that, actually, I think it was a little before COVID. Actually, I think it was what Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 2018 or maybe it was 2019. Anyways, I used to do videos for nutritional videos for health and nutrition. And one day I decided to do a video up on the hill behind my house just for a different scenery. And Bonnie was tuning in. And when I was done with the video, we chatted about it. And she told me, "You have fairies all around you listening to your video as you were doing it." And I was fascinated by that. So I decided to look at the pictures from the video, and I saw the Fae sitting on the rock behind my shoulder listening to me. Um, Fast forward, I decided, Bonnie, since I have fairies up on the hill, I really want to get to know them. And we were in my room and we were talking, Bonnie and I. And I'm like, I wonder what their names are. And Bonnie, she has many gifts. She said, a name just popped in my head. And she told me Lacey. So the following day, I went up on the hill and I called out for Lacey. And I was trying to figure out, since I don't have the gift that Bonnie has in regards to clairaudience and being able to hear, I decided to do a video knowing that Bonnie was friends with Susan. So I took my phone out and I had a conversation with Lacey and the elders. There's a group of Mennonite fairies that live up on my hill, and they all decided to speak into my phone. I would do a video so they could speak. I would send the video over to Bonnie. Bonnie couldn't hear it either, but Bonnie would play it for Susan, the fairy that she was friends with. And it escalated from there. It turned into what we have today, which are meetings every single week. And with those meetings, we learn from each other. Um, During those meetings, we have talked about everything under the sun, from world events, um, differences between how we live, and the meetings have grown. I have this feeling when I travel around town on I'm losing my train of thought here. When I'm walking around town, I sometimes get a feeling I need to connect with fairies that may live in this tree or in this bush. And over the years, I have invited several different fairies to these meetings. And the meetings have grown, and they're probably about, I don't know, between 20 to 40 fae that come to the meetings weekly, wouldn't you say, Bonnie?
Hmm. On your side,
Yeah.
and on my side, it's maybe about 15.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Now, back up to my introduction to fairies. I was skeptical at first. And there was a lot of things that happened that proved to me that all of this was really happening. And I'm going to tell a story about when I lost my crystal necklace, because that was the first wow moment for me that really blew my mind. There's been many since then, but this particular one, I house sit for my daughter a lot who likes to travel, and I house sit for her cats and her house. And that particular weekend, left my crystal necklace over at her house, and it's one of my favorite necklaces. And she couldn't find it. My daughter looked everywhere for it, and she couldn't find it. And I was so heartbroken over losing that necklace. Heartbroken. Now, I need to back up a little bit because I forgot to tell you that I have a wonderful fairy friend named Jocelyn, and she is one of my house fairies. We all have fae that live in our house. And Jocelyn is with me all the time. She helps me a lot. She helps me through when I'm not feeling good, when I'm sad. And she's probably sitting listening to me right now. Well, she must have heard me so upset over losing this necklace. Um, One day I was cleaning my room and I found the necklace hanging in a spot that I would have never put it. It just showed up. So at the following meeting, I asked Jocelyn, and she said yes. She went over to my daughter's house and found the necklace for me and brought it home. So that was the first wow moment for me in regards to complete proof that these beautiful beings are surrounding me daily. Yeah. And this also happened with, I'm notorious for losing my glasses. Notorious. And Bonnie's like, why don't you just ask Jocelyn, Kitty, and David, who are the three house fairies who I've gotten to know, if they wouldn't mind finding them for you. So I did, and I left. I was going to the grocery store. I went to the grocery store without my glasses. When I came home, I was expecting them to be on the counter if they found them or whatever. No glasses. Could not find them anywhere still. The next morning, I got up to make myself coffee and eat breakfast, and I went to go sit at the dining room table, and hanging on the fruit bowl in the middle of the table were my glasses. Now, I would never have hung them on the fruit bowl. And I live with my parents, or I should say they live with me now. And I asked my mom, did, did you put my glasses here? Nobody in the house put my glasses there. So, of course, I had to ask Jocelyn, and Jocelyn found them for me again and put my glasses on the fruit bowl for me. So that was the second wow moment. And there's been many wow moments since then.
Okay. Therese, this is incredible storytelling as well, in addition to Bonnie's introduction. And I have a lot of questions that I would like to ask the both of you, I guess in turn here, about these quorums that you're holding with the Fae. This is incredible to me, and I definitely want to ask some questions about what you're talking about more than anything, I think. Before I get there, though, I just want to say, like, when you mentioned how Bonnie caught the name Lacey and you said Lacey, I got like full body goosebumps at the word Lacey, and they lasted for a minute or so as you were getting into the then unpacking of how meeting Lacey on the hill led to these quorums. And so I just want to make sure I've got everybody's name straight. So Susan is the Fae that is living in Bonnie's neighborhood in her backyard, basically.
Right.
Lacey's the one on the hill near your place. And Jocelyn is your house Fae that you're closely connected to.
Correct.
Now, just about the crystal necklace. So you're sure you had this crystal necklace with you when you went to go house sit?
Oh, yes. You're definitely at my
okay,
daughter's.
just make. I mean, I'm not disbelieving you. I just want to make sure I've got the storytelling correct. And a lot of times I like to go back to what was just said because it's so neat, and that's really the main reason. And so, where was it hanging? You said it was in a place that you would have never put it. I'm just curious, where did you eventually find that crystal necklace in your own home?
I have a bookshelf in my room, and on the side of the bookshelf, I have a little nail there. And on that nail, I hang my earbuds for my phone, which is nowhere near where I hang my jewelry, which is on the other side of my room. So that's where it was hanging. It was hanging with my earbuds on the side of my bookshelf, not where I keep my jewelry at all. So that's where I noticed it.
Fascinating. You know, I spoke to a guest last night and he told me a story about he basically lived with his grandmother and they left together in a particular way because she's the one who drives. So he like left the house before her. She followed directly behind him. They both got in the car. They went for their drive. They got back. She got out first and opened the door first and got into the house first. And the point is about this physical object thing I'm going to get to. There was, in his particular case, a line of rocks in a fairy ring surrounding a chest where he kept his artwork paint. And inexplicable entry into the home, like no open window, no open door, no one was there. It's such an odd thing to have happened, this line of rocks surrounding his chest with paint. And the part I was having the hardest time getting my head around is like, how are the Fae taking rocks from his gravel driveway, bringing them through the wall effectively, moving them as well? Like, how are they picking them up? Do you have any sense in having spoken with the Fae or in just intuition? I asked this both to Bonnie and Therese, I guess, even though Therese, it's your story. How are they moving your necklace? How are they moving these objects you're describing them retrieving, like your glasses? I'm curious if you have any insight into how that's taking place.
Jim, I can fill that in, Jim, and I think you'll find it remarkably logical.
And we asked the fairies about how they did this too, so they told us.
Yeah, we did. And as far as passing through walls, they have not explained to us yet how that's done. And most of the ones we know they're just not telling us, and which is infuriating.
Well,
but they're saying that not all of them can do that, and they'll get around to it. They will. But the way that they transport something, especially if they're so small, how would they transport a stone? Now, this is where it's going to be very interesting for people because, I'm sure you have heard a lot lately about Tesla and the fact that we've had anti-grav science all worked out for probably the past 75 years, but they've never wanted to tell us about it because that would knock out the oil people and the gas people and they wouldn't make all their money. So we asked them one time, like, how do you get around? And they have something called a carrier, which is made of a couple of different kinds of metal, and they have magnets on the bottom, and they have to learn how to pilot one. But I've got quite a few pictures of carriers and fairies in carriers, and we don't see them, and I'm glad that we don't, because I'm sure people would not react very well. They fly these very small. One of them, the one I saw that I got the best picture of, looks kind of like a canoe, but it's magnetic and it works in opposition to the magnetic force in the earth. And they have these really strong magnets on the bottom, and they have to learn how to control it and how to get it high enough and move forward, move back, and all that stuff. And so they've had those. In fact, the ones that were talking to us about it said they don't remember a time they didn't have those. And so that's how they transported her necklace from her daughter's house up to her house. And sometimes they just come in the door or they come in a window that's partly open. So, it ends up where there's so many things that they have and that they do that are mirroring the human world, except to them, it's just every day. That's just what they've always known. And so, and just one little point here, Helen, Therese, one thing they do that is indicative of how far they've come, they don't own individual carriers. They have a lot of carriers laying around, and when you need to go somewhere, you just hop in one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they work that, so that everybody has a way.
Fascinating. As I ask the question, I reflect back on my earlier offline conversation with the both of you, where I did tell you I watched one physically just come through 2 windows as though the pane of glass did not exist. I watched that happen with my own 2 eyes. And it was just among the astonishing things that I saw that day, that and how it sounded, the color of the light, so many qualities of what I experienced were truly remarkable. And it's interesting that you talked, Bonnie, when you were sort of getting into your conversation about like how fairies sometimes are misunderstood as every fairy is magical. But you're both sort of indicating that we're talking about more of a nuanced society, like a human society. And I would argue we got people like humans walking around that are pretty magical. I've met some people that have done some things that I've witnessed that are just unbelievable to me. And at the same time, there's people who hand out parking tickets, and they are not magical at all. They are not going home. Those fine people of the parking enforcement division are just, it's not to say that like some humans are evolved and spiritual and others aren't. I think that with enough conscious effort, every person can break themselves free from whatever paradigm they're stuck in. But you're not the first person to sort of indicate that there's a range of what you might consider magical abilities that are representative fractionally in the population of Fae, much like you might consider it represented fractionally in the population of humans. And that when you're talking about a society where there's more or less like fairy jobs, fairy responsibilities, fairy social structure, not everybody all the time is 100% of the time doing magical stuff.
No, they're not. And I can hear the giggles when we play this for them. No, they're not.
Again, I don't want to talk too much because I want to get into questions, but this is all leading to some questions, all this conversation from me. In a circumstance where that's all taking place, right, like you're describing. And again, I've heard this from other people as well. A quick side note as I get to this question, but this is also kind of related. I have an episode with Alex, and he and I laugh our faces off saying, imagine finding out that fairies have just normal names like Bob and Sally. and they sure do, apparently, is what it sounds like. And so he will love this. Hearing that there's probably a fairy named Bob right now, somewhere in his neighborhood. I guess my question is really just leading to sort of this question, and this is an open question for either of you who would like to answer. Fairy society, how long has it been around? Is that something that you've been able to determine in conversation with them?
Oh, let's let Therese answer that.
Yes, fairy society has been around from what I understand, since Atlantis and before. So they go back, and we have had history lessons in some of our meetings from Jonathan, who is one of the elder Mennonites up on the hill, about the history of the fairies and how the veil went up. So back in the day of Atlantis is as far back as he went. And now I know that I'm 99% positive that Fey life was way before Atlantis as well. But back in the day of Atlantis, we all lived together in harmony. The veil was not up, so we can see that we were able to see the fairies. We used to work together peacefully and help each other. Um, it wasn't until the dark set into Atlantis, and darkness set in, and people started to become greedy, and a lot of humans were getting hurt and killed from this greed and darkness that set into the days of Atlantis. The fairies got very, very frightened, and they prayed. They prayed hard for protection, and that is when the veil went up, and we weren't able to see them anymore. So they have been around a very long time. And from what I understand, back in the day of Atlantis, even the humans used to have carriers, just like the fairies still have.
Thank you for that answer, and it's truly fascinating answer. I've heard again from multiple people, and I want to just sort of make a clarification, right? I have to do the job when I put this podcast on of trying to sort of cherry pick, I guess, for lack of a better word, the interviews that I am going to publish, and even so far as like the time I'm going to personally spend talking to people, right? So I already knew instinctually that I should talk with you because of just the length of which we've been trying to put this together and the consistency of that pre-conversation. That's a really good indicator to me that, you know, someone's got something they want to talk about. You are really opening up my understanding by way of, I guess, affirmation here. Because, you know, I've had guests that I'm not sure I want to put that episode out. In one in particular, Alvera and her connection with this elf. As I listened to you talk, though, she and her and I had an interview months ago, was telling the exact same story about the veil going up. And I was not ready to understand it, I don't think, at that time. And I would also say, and this is not to discredit Alvera, whose episode I will be putting out really soon here, she herself was surprised to make contact with this elf. Kind of like you're describing, Susan, she didn't really ask out loud, but she had a voice enter her head, which was clearly this elf. Her way of summoning it was she was continuously drawing a picture of the same elf over and over and again for months and months and months, and she couldn't figure out why. It was just like she was compelled to just draw this elf. And one day he spoke to her and said, "I'm the guy you keep drawing." And they've now started dialogue, and what you're telling me about the veil going up is absolutely to the letter affirmational. Also, Bonnie, what you're saying about how like they're coexisting a step away from our selves, but that what we do is impacting them. And Alvera was describing like our pollution is transcending the veil at this juncture and starting to really muddle with their version of reality as well. So some questions that I wanted to expand on now that we've kind of circled back on all those interviews that I'll get a chance to publish now that you've helped me with my understanding about what's going on here. I guess the next thing is, so you're saying that they're under the ground, which confirms a lot of fairy lore, might be one of the few things in fairy lore that is accurate, in fact. What are fairy society roles, I guess? What is their relationship to the earth? What are they here to do, I guess? What's the basis of fairy society? And is it all underground or is some of it above ground? Can you help me understand that a bit better?
Can I take that one, Therese?
Absolutely.
Okay. First, I want to throw something in here that I should have mentioned earlier, which is that I think Susan knew that I still had a teeny tiny bit of doubt. And, you know, we're humans are like that. A gray alien or one of the tall, gorgeous blonde ones or whatever could walk up to my door and say, "Hey, let's go down the street to the vegan restaurant I'm buying." And I still would not completely believe. I would have to say, "I know you're dressed up for some convention, right?" And it would take a while. They'd have to do something. And as much as I have been aware of all of these unseen things for a long time, I think Susan knew that I just needed something more than that little picture of her in that white dress. So one day, shortly after that first picture, I was just taking random shots of the bush outside my apartment, right by the patio where they all live. And um, when I got it on the computer, I do not know how they did this, and they will not tell me, but they had somehow superimposed like a portrait of Susan, her husband, and these two other people who I learned later were called Solomon and Lindy, who were kind of like their grandparents or their parents, like the kind of relatives where they're adopted, that sort of thing. But anyway, it was a group of fairies, and it was not uh, a shadow or little colors. It was nothing like that. It was very clear that these were human beings, and they were all in a group. And Susan was looking at me with this big smile on her face, looking right at the camera. And when I saw this, it was about 10 o'clock at night. And I went running out to the back, and usually they're all asleep by about 9. And I just said, "Wake up, wake up. You got to tell me how you did this." And they were all laughing. They thought it was funny. And it was amazing. So I have what would really be a real portrait of Susan and her family. And all of that was really helping me to cement everything in my head. As far as the Fairy Society and what they're here for, that part is unbelievable for humans, because if you think of maybe Native Americans or the Canadian natives and all of the things that have transpired in communities that were thriving long before people came and quote unquote discovered the land or colonized it and kicked the people who lived there out. All of those people who were so in touch with spirit and with nature, that's a lot of the the way to represent fairy life and their whole structure. They have a lot of the same belief systems that we do. In fact, one of the interesting things is that the fairy that I saw that I knew was Lacey had a typical Mennonite outfit on, and I recognized it immediately. I thought, wow, she's wearing one of those little white caps, and she's got a long skirt and a long white apron. And we finally asked later when we were at a point where we could talk. And as time went by, we found out, yes, we had different beliefs, and a lot of them have evolved exactly as humans because we live in this world with humans, and we are, it's as if we are humans. So a lot of the different things that we do and that we believe in, they also do, but they're not all Mennonites. They're not all of anything. They're all whatever they want to believe in. And the other part of it is what they do is their society is based on contributing.
Mhm.
Whatever you can do that you do well and that you love, that's what you do to contribute to society. And for instance, Susan's husband is a carpenter, and he makes furniture, cooking utensils, toys, things for like brooms. He makes all kinds of things, but he makes beautiful furniture. And it's an art, but that's also what the other Fae families will get for their homes. And the one thing that I really love about the whole situation, and this is something that's such a dream, they don't use money, and they are really perplexed by our society, and they don't understand why we have to have these pieces of paper in order to get food, or in order to get, and they really don't understand the concept of buying water. But the way they work it is they have a big market, and in the market, each person who has a skill or a some kind of an object to offer, whether it's clothing or um, furniture or whatever it might be, each one has a booth, and you go up there and you bring something with you to trade. And the way it works is I give you something you need, you give me something I need or something I want. That's how it works. And nobody has to go and work a job that they hate and get money and then go use the money to get what they want. It doesn't work that way at all. And they really do not understand that whole concept. It seems so foreign to them. Um, they also have a system where if you have done something really bad, then, and it has to be really bad. It can't be like just a kid that has a temper tantrum or something. It's got to be really bad. They do something that the Bantu do. In fact, that is kind of the nickname of one of our Fae. And that is to gather around the person who did whatever the thing was, with the whole village comes around them and surrounds them with love and talks to them and counsels them and forgives them And by the end of it, everybody's in tears and there's a big group hug and the person tries to make amends for whatever they did. Now, beyond that, if they don't make amends or if they're not interested in being counseled and forgiven, then they are asked to leave and they are given everything they need to make their way to another village and they are escorted out of the area, which to me makes much more sense than what we do.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what they're here for and their goals and dreams, I don't know. I mean, they all have things they do, and they're beginning to understand how lucky they are that they can wake up and do what they love the most and have their needs met. Oh, the other thing, Therese knows all about this. The
I know,
fact that
I'm itching to
they,
say my.
they have, yeah, they have people around them all the time. If you're sick, then you've got 5 people who are coming over to help you and make food for you and all that. And but anyway, Therese can pick up and finish the rest of this.
Well, yes, whenever anybody needs anything, there's a group of people there to help you, and that's part of contributing to the village. Um, so, for instance, I take care of my elderly parents by myself, and I wish all the time that I had help. And Jocelyn's telling me all the time that would not be the way of the Fae. The way of the Fae is you would have numerous people helping you daily. And that's how we give back to each other. And there's no money involved at all. Everyone just gives to each other. And if you walk up to a booth at the market and you would like that cup, Trevor in the backyard, he works with metal. And if somebody wanted a cup or a fork that Trevor made, then Trevor would just give it to them. They don't need payment right away. That payment would happen down the road. It's just a known thing. Everybody gives to each other. So you don't need to worry about you need to pay me back. There's none of that in the fairy world. They are very loving, compassionate people. And I might want to add that none of the fairies that we know have wings. They are all human. And Bonnie mentioned they live underground. Some of them decide to live within the tree, within the branches of the trunk of the tree.
Mhm.
Most live underground, but many of them live in trees. Um, and the children, um, as they grow and learn and go to school, they are able to nourish their spiritual calling. We all have our passions. You know, some people are artists, some people are gardeners, some people like Trevor is a guardian. And a guardian in the fairy world, every village has guardians. Every village. And a guardian in the fairy world is kind of like the police in our world, but it differs because it's done with compassion and everybody gets involved with helping, not just the guardian. The guardians organize the help, but everybody gets involved. um, Another thing in their societies that they do, for instance, if a tree is cut down, a lot of people will lose their homes and get hurt because it's a sudden thing. All of a sudden their homes are being chopped down. I mean, most human beings don't walk up to the tree and say, "Hi, fairies, we need to remove this tree. We're going to give you a month to move all your belongings and get a new place to live." Oh, no, no, no. The tree just falls down. And all of the Fae rush to that tree to help these people find new homes, move their belongings, and it's it's the guardians who organize that whole event. They're the organizers. And that's how they work. So they're not quite like policemen in our world, but in a sense, that's their job, to protect and help.
Therese, this is also an amazing degree of detail that you're possessing about Fae society. It's really interesting to me. I don't want to talk too much about other people's interviews, but going back to Alvera and her discussion of the elf that I had with her months ago, and again, I've been struggling to put that episode out. You're mirroring an exact description of the barter system, but not just barter, because barter is like, I give you this now and I get something now. That's barter. This is more altruistic in the sense that it's an understanding of the circular nature of existence within that society. And basically, like how Elvira was describing it, was like, there's no money. And the elf she's in contact with is super confused about what she basically is like showing him about human society. Another thing that's really interesting, again, I'm going to put her episode, I think, back to back with yours so that this conversation makes sense in context for the audience, was that she was like, I was like, okay, well, like, fairies are magical. What I saw was, crazy illuminated. It flew. I thought they're magical. And she's sort of saying to me, well, the elf I'm in contact with is a pretty normal dude. He's not very worldly, so he can't tell you a ton about like fairy society. He's kind of just in his own village. And he just is as surprised as I am that we're talking. He just started meditating in his own personal life, and we've now, come in contact. And she's also describing like what you're talking about, where they're living in an overlapping type, like an intermingled overlapping, a step apart is what you said, and I think that's a good way to put it. I think you did a good job there, Bonnie. But yeah, they're living in a way that is overlapped within our reality, and that's so fascinating to me. It also comes to mind, like when you're talking about these various elements of fairy society. I didn't think I really understood earlier when you were talking about these Mennonite fairies. So are they like, they're dressed like a Mennonite? And for the audience listening who's global and might not know what a Mennonite is, that's a religious, like a Christian religious subsect, I guess. It's kind of like the Amish, but not really,
Right.
But it's the same sort of like it's also kind of like the Quakers, but not really, It's in that zone of like super religious-y, where they don't do certain things of the modern world and they do a lot of the things of the old world. Are these Mennonite fairies like Mennonites? Like, or is it a type of fairy Mennonite? I'm just really
well,
they're not all Mennonites. That's
I do understand that.
The church
Yeah.
yeah.
I just mean the ones that you do know of. I really did follow you earlier, how like some are Mennonites, some might be Buddhist, some might be agnostic. But the ones that are Mennonites, I'm just curious, like to what degree does their Mennonite style reflect, like mirror human one, I guess is my question.
Very, very much the same. Now, keep in mind that in the Fae world, there hasn't been any kind of corruption in their society. There hasn't been hidden truths. Um, as you grow consciously and you wake up to our personal human reality, you realize there's been a lot of lies told to us in regards to our history, in regards to our religious history. There's a lot that hasn't been told to us. So it may differ a little bit. The Christianity, the Mennonite, those type of faiths are a little bit different than the human way, because there's been a lot that has not been hidden from them. But for the most part, it's much the same. Now, unlike in our world, there's a lot of strict religious faiths that look at uh for loss of words, that look at meditation and crystals and a lot of the spiritual followings as taboo. Whereas in the fairy world, that's not the case. In the fairy world, it's all accepted. And a lot of the gifts, the spiritual gifts, um, many of them have, like the clairvoyant abilities. And not all fae have the same abilities, just like people. They're all different.
Hmm.
And they're all different. There's lots of different races of fae. And there's some fae that most of the fae that we are friends with look human, just like us. However, there are some that may look a little different. Another thing I want to add that just pops into my head that I don't want to forget is um, they have compassion for all beings. And when I say that, they are able to talk to their animals. Their animals are civilized, in a sense where, like, for instance, we have to potty train our dogs. They don't have to do that with their pets. Um, they can communicate with the insects, the plants, and the animals. Everything has consciousness from what they have taught us, including the plants. Um, and they don't understand our world. They're all vegan. They don't eat animals. They don't, the thought of doing that just appalls them, because in their world, even the tigers and the lions are not carnivore. Everybody is plant-based in the fairy world. Every
Remember,
insect.
Therese, let me interrupt you 1 second. Remember when they said they do eat eggs, and we asked, well, how do you get the eggs? And they said the hens give them to us.
Uh-huh.
The hens will give you what they want you to have. And
same with the bees with the honey.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie, Therese, you are both just blowing my mind right now. And I need to tell you why so that it makes some sense. Now, I've said at least every episode that this show is not about me. But, I mean, how can it not be? It's my show. I've been a vegan for going on 25 years.
Me too.
When you said earlier that a great alien could show up at your door and say, let's go down the road to the vegan restaurant, my ears perked up because, that's like a hot word for me. I'm like, oh. Also, when you say that they live in trees, okay, I mean, I'm 45 now. When I was in my, basically just turned 20, I used to live in this place called Tofino on the West Coast. And we have some of the last intact temperate old growth rainforest in North America. We're talking 1,200-year-old trees. No joke. These are like California redwood-sized trees, but on the ocean, not inland like they are in the redwoods. And so these trees were being cut down and turned into toilet paper when I lived in this community. I was up there surfing.
Oh.
And it just, I was really able-bodied back then. I could surf. I could live in the bush. I worked in this landscaping company. I had a truck. I would get back into these amazing places because there's logging roads going back there. And I would literally see a full-size logging truck, which for context for the listener is as big as a big rig, like taking a tractor trailer, like a big thing you see a 16-wheeler, 18-wheeler, with one section of one tree on it. It didn't even have the whole tree. It just had one chunk of what, is a 1,000-foot tree or a 900-foot tall tree.
Breaking my heart.
And
breaking
so
my heart.
when I saw all that, I became enraged and fascinated by this ecosystem. And so long story short, I was arrested for protesting logging. I had a long history back there in the bush. But I never connected any of these activities about myself to the Fae. I just knew, instinctually, you shouldn't be eating these amazing animals. It's creation. No dead food for my living body was really clear to me because I worked on this farm and I participated in an animal slaughter. And it just stuck with me forever. I was like, I'm never going to do this again.
Yep.
Branching out from there, I then found my compassion for the forest was like, and so when I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, man, have I just been like priming myself this entire time to end up hosting a fairy podcast? Like,
I believe, Jim, that there is a certain segment of the human population on Earth that already lives, at least in our hearts, like the Fae. We just have to find a way to make that become an actual thing. And the Fae life to us is so beautiful and so perfect. Well, it's not perfect, but they would argue that. But it's so much like what we have always dreamed that we would have one day. The other issue here is that people that I've spoken with about this whole concept of not having money and everybody gives to everyone else. Does anybody get rich? Well, the whole idea is you can live very well if you want to, but it just depends on what you do, how you do it, what kind of a person you are to contribute. But it isn't like some people have everything and some people have nothing. That doesn't happen in faith society. So it's really kind of a utopia in a way. The only thing is people are expected in Fae, you're expected to pitch in. And if you can't do something that you can offer at the market, then you can do something. A good example is, these were so many great questions that we asked. How did they do their laundry? Well, guess what? They have a group of women and men who that's what they do. That's their contribution. And you take your laundry to the group of people and they do your laundry and they bring it back to you. And that is what they do for the community. I mean, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Yeah. And Trevor is very busy. He's got Ravel, who's his horse. He's got a group of help me, Bonnie, I'm trying to blank.
50 guardians.
Yeah, 50 guardians that he is the leader, and he's has to organize all of that, and he's very busy. So
One
he's
thing
got
too,
people that come in and help with daily chores around the house and help him take care of his horse and feed his horse. And so everybody pitches in, and so that way what is truly important and needs to be done can be done, and everybody puts in their part. It's just a beautiful system, and it works.
you're describing such an egalitarian approach to society structure. And I think that probably that veil is there for a good reason right now, because our society, by contrast, is a mess.
Oh, yeah.
To help focus this conversation and to keep it respectful of the audience's time and yours as well, first of all, just allow me to punctuate everything that's been said so far by saying that I think you are both just beautiful, beautiful people. This has been a really uplifting conversation for me. I did not expect to be chatting with some fellow vegans, and that's huge for me. And not to make this show about veganism, but for everyone listening, I'm middle-aged. I've got a six-pack. I've got all my hair. People ID me. And, I just eat fruit and vegetables. Really, at the end of the day, you do not need to consume any animals whatsoever. And any belief that you're carrying in your heart that you do is a lie that's been implanted from a whole big set of systems that are way too much to talk about here.
So true.
And
Thank you for that.
It's the truth. And I have no shame in saying it. And I tell all my close relatives and friends that, hey, go vegan, do it for yourself. Look at my living example. I'm not crazy about it. I respect whatever you decide to do, but hey, you want to really uplift your soul, because what happens when you stop consuming death is your conscious vibration, your conscious energy, however you want to put it, it's set free. It's bizarre. Okay. Yes. I'll give you some examples. I have birds that just land on me outside of my house all of the time.
Mhm.
I'll go stretch, put my hands up in the air, and birds will land on my hand. And people in the condo know me as the guy that the birds land on. Squirrels run up my leg. The other day, I had a river otter come out of the waterfall right up to my deck. And like, I actually am starting to think that a lot of the animal encounters I'm having are shape-shifted fae showing themselves in this plane. Not the least of which is this owl that showed up right outside my window. I mean, talking 5 feet outside my window the day I decided to start this podcast.
Wow.
And I'll leave that story for you to unpack by listening to some upcoming stuff, because I do tell the owl story very in detail to Claire from the Fairy Whispering podcast. Shout out to Claire for her awesome podcast here. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I want to say one more thing before we come to a close, and that's that my good friend, my house fae, the main one, Jody, has been sitting here with me very patiently and looking at me like, you're not going to mention me, are you? And I decided I have to, because she puts up with a lot, and she's a good friend too, and I have a really good picture of her too. So I just wanted to say that.
And I would like to add that anybody listening to this podcast can listen to many of the teachings that Bonnie and I have had from the Fae on our YouTube channel. Um,
The
the
River of
river
Truth.
of, yeah, the river of truth. Fairies are real. Although I had to put it backwards. Fairies are real. The river of truth, just for the search engine. And a fairy helped me, Susan. It actually named that podcast for us. So, or podcast that channel for us on
And
YouTube.
Teresa's videos are wonderful. They're beautiful too.
Well, I read a lot, and my delivery needs some work because I don't memorize everything and I don't want to miss a beat. So I'm reading a lot of the material, and it's a little slow coming out with my reading, but I'm working on my delivery. So, but the information is there. So please have a look.
Thank you both for that information about how to access some of these teachings, because that is something that I was going to talk about as we move towards not the end of the conversation. Just to be clear, no real rush to wrap it up. We'll talk another few minutes here before we go. I don't want you to feel any pressure to wrap up or anything, but I do like to keep mindful of the audience's time is all. So with that said, one of the things that I think would be extremely valuable, I mean, what you've said, Therese, is what I was hoping to hear. You know, I think I would love to go spend some more time there myself. I did check in preface to this conversation, and now that I understand this context, it's a lot more interesting for me. And so I would definitely, encourage everyone listening here tonight to go check out that channel where they can find some more of this information, because you've brought up, just for my own self, like 5 or 6 things: the veganism thing, the tree thing. Like, I wondered, why have I always been compelled to do this stuff? And I'm starting to really understand it through a lens I would never have expected about myself. And so you two have given me that gift, and I'm sure that other people listening are receiving the same value in their position as audience, the extremely valuable people. Hey, thanks for being here, by the way, everybody listening. Sincerely appreciate you guys and girls, and all the non-human people that are listening too, so.
Absolutely. I have to say this one thing for all that is listening, to understand that the fairies don't only live in trees. They live in bushes, they live in flowers, they live underground. And whenever you are shoveling a hole in the ground, you may be digging up and destroying some fairy homes or tunnels under the ground. Whenever you are pulling up a big bush or chopping down a tree, keep in mind that there are people living there that you are disrupting and possibly hurting and killing. So keep that in mind as you go about your yard work and your daily activity. If there's something abruptive that you're going to be doing, like cutting down a tree or a bush, think about giving the fairies at least a month warning before you do it so they can safely move and get their belongings so nobody gets hurt. And that way we can all live here on this planet in harmony and more peacefully, because the poor fairies have to put up with all of us doing these things. And sometimes it's devastating for them.
You know, Therese, you're so articulate in this compassionate, advocacy for the Fae. You're doing it a great service, and I want to thank you for that. Bonnie, I would say the same thing as well. And each of you have your own distinct personalities and experiences, which really complement one another. I can see why you guys are friends. That makes me happy to talk to a pair of friends at the same time.
Thank you. We're glad we're friends too.
Yes.
I lost my best friend to suicide. This June 1st, it'll be 9 years. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, his music, DK, is at the end of all the episodes to this show. For anybody who's wondered
Oh.
who that is, that's Daniel, my good buddy. And so that's the way I pay tribute to him as part of my podcast, is I put his music at the end.
Oh, I like that.
He would have loved this show, and he would have loved this conversation. He and I did a whole bunch of work around ocean awareness, activism around health of the oceans. You know, ultimately, when I saw my fairy and I was on my boat, it was a continuation of that work that he and I started with the Jellyfish Project, which was something that, which is what I'm referring to. And so, you know, this conversation is so uplifting because it's like, I've often said, and I will say again, that this is a magical, utterly magical place to find yourself. Like, open the window, look outside, just go look at a plant for a second. Go look at a bug, like really look at it. Like, go find one bird and just watch that bird for a while. Listen to that single bird, what it's saying, what it's doing. It's incredible. You know, I have this little fox sparrow who lives out in front of my house, and it was born with like a deformed beak. So instead of the beak closing like a nice pair of scissors, it's like split. Like it's hard to explain. Like the lower part of the beak goes to the left and the top part of the beak goes to the right. And so only the base of the beak, like down where the tongue is, like right next to the face, actually connects, you know? And that little thing just is like in there in the sunflower seeds, harder than any of the other birds, cracks them open just fine. I call that little bird Unbreakable Beak because it's just so tough, you know? And I guess my point is that like all of this discussion about the Fae can sometimes feel not connected to reality to so many people, right? They're like, oh, this is like woo-woo. This is just the fabrication of your imaginations.
no.
I would counter that the opposite is true. You're living right now in visceral magic at all times. You can detect the traces of the golden age that you're referring to all around you. It's the echo of it when humans lived in golden harmony with animal kind. That's the golden age that kept being talked about in history that everyone thinks was fantasy as well. It's not fantasy. The veil went up. The whatever you want to call it, sadistic cult, basically, of consumption, greed, death, subjugation, separation from self, separation from truth, separation from others. Here's an example, and I'll segue off to, I guess, my next question as part of this discussion that I'm going down. We had this thing in Nanaimo, BC, where I am, where this block was trying to get it together where they would just have one lawnmower for the block. Like, there was only 8 houses on the block, right? And they're like, why do we each have our own lawnmowers? Why don't we just have one for the block? You know, just, you know, and like, wasn't even like you get it Monday, you get it Tuesday. It was just like, it's just the one for the block. Like, how many people are going to need this lawnmower at the exact same time? It'll just figure itself out. And the people on the block could not get together to do it. It was just like a guy on Facebook trying to like get to, hey, let's just all just have one lawnmower. Like, where's it going to stay? What if I need it on Tuesday and you need it on Tuesday? I got to have my own,
Yeah.
The exact opposite of what you're describing the Fae are capable of is our calamity, and I do think we can separate ourselves from the troubles around us, but it takes a collective desire to move away from these lies and these hidden truths, as you so elegantly put, Therese.
Yes.
Very well put. So many things both of you have said are so well put and so articulate. It really does lend service to everything that's been discussed tonight.
Jim, one thing that you had mentioned earlier about what do they think their purpose is, or what is their esoteric idea of a goal for their life. There is one, and that is for us all to get to the point where the veil will go away.
And we
that
all
is
can live
actually
peacefully. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that it'll be at the point where humans will understand who the Fae are, and they'd be willing to piece it all back together. I don't know that it could all happen immediately all at one time, but I could be wrong. I don't know. They have a thing now called full collective disclosure and soft disclosure, or something like no catastrophic disclosure and soft disclosure. And catastrophic is where everything all comes out at one time, like within a couple of days. And the other part is where you learn things slowly but surely. And they're talking about, well, there's advantages to both. But I would say that humans have to grow up, and we have to be able to have enough courage to be kind and let go of a lot of the ideas about what has value in life, like a bigger car, a bigger house, the perfect outfit, or whatever it is. They have to kind of set all that aside and look at everything a different way. And I think for a lot of people, like us three, for instance, it will be easy. It'll be a relief, as a matter of fact. But the idea of the veil going down, going up, wherever it goes, just dissolving so that we can all work together, we all live together, and we all respect one another. And eventually we hopefully will adapt most of the Fae kind of life. And that is the actual, I mean, as the meetings have progressed over the past 5 years, we've come to realize that that's what we're aiming for. That's part of the reason that we're doing all this.
Absolutely. And with all of that said, something just popped into my head. Just like our wishes for the veil to leave, there's a handful of Fae that wish the same thing. But there are also a handful of Fae who don't feel they should be communicating with the human race.
Yeah, I forgot about
And
that.
they think that we're bad. And we've had several fairies who have changed their mind because of the meetings. Several fairies that wanted nothing to do with us, but their friend was in the meeting and decided to give us a chance. And we've also been told by the fairies that back in the day of Atlantis, when many of the humans fell to the dark side and became greedy and mean, um, and the veil went up, so the fae couldn't be seen. I forgot to mention that there are a group of fairies that also fell to the dark side, and they also cannot see the fairies of the light, the good fae. There's a veil up for all of humanity not to see the fae, but there's also a veil up for the dark fae, the fae that aren't loving and kind, that fell to the dark side. They can't see the fae of the light either. And Jonathan was telling a story how he was standing right in front of one of them and they couldn't see him. So I wanted to put that out there, that there is such thing as good vibration and bad vibration, and it depends on where you're at, um, on the side of the veil. And I wish that all of us humans that are good with a good heart and compassionate could be like the fairy world and see the fae of the light. But unfortunately, all of us humans can't see the fae, although we do get glimpses of them now and then, like your story that you told. And when that happens, it's a beautiful thing.
You're speaking so much truth. This is a wildly uplifting conversation. I forgot to mention the person I was with, also vegan, longtime vegan. Both of us. It was one of the reasons we were so connected. That's something really interesting. Bonnie, I really appreciate something that Therese said that I didn't understand until a second ago, when she said that you have like a clairaudience, because I didn't actually say it out loud, but I was like going to say, well, what do the Fae want from us exactly? Like that was going to be my question. So, and then you just really did answer that by what they want is they want us to get back to where the veil is gone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you definitely heard the question that I was going to use as a wrap up. Normally how I do things at the end of the show with someone who's glimpsed a fairy, for example, is I say, well, there's no wrong answer or right answer here. What do you think fairies are? We've been basically talking in effect about that for the whole show. So instead I was going to ask you, well, now that we've talked about what the Fae are for so long, to close up, Bonnie, I'll ask you, what do you think they would like from us? And I didn't say it out loud, but you just jumped in and answered it. I was like letting that finish, and then you, Therese, said, I have a thought pop into my head. And as Bonnie was finishing, I was like getting my own question ready for you next, because something that's been bugging me as I host this show is there seems to be light and dark Fae, and I couldn't figure that out. And I wanted to ask you at the end, because I just published an episode with this person named Frozen Wolf, who had some dark Fae experiences. And, I've published a couple of episodes, one called A Hint of Hellfire, where there was a dark Fae. I'm allowing these to come because what the people are describing are so remarkably detail adjacent, like specific to my own. I'm like, okay, well, what I saw was light, what they saw was dark, but we saw the same kind of capabilities on display. So I'm going to let these people talk. So then I was going to ask you, Therese, well, could you or have you ever asked the fairy what's going on with some dark Fae and light Fae? You then answered the question before I also asked it as well just now. And that's really worth mentioning. So for the audience, those were my two questions. Those are the two answers to wrap up the show.
I love it when those things happen. And I thought I would get to a point where nothing would impress me. Like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, wow. But that's so cool. I love it when there's communication on that level, because it's refreshing, it's energizing, and it also gives me a lot of hope.
Yes. And I know you're trying to wrap up, but keep in mind that the fairies also told us, when I asked them about the winged fae, they got scared.
Yeah.
They got scared. It was like a taboo subject. I had to push and poke to get that topic out. Come on, you guys, you've known us for a few years now. I want to know about the winged fae. Come on. So from what they taught us is that many of the winged fae are not very, they're animalistic like, and mischievous, and they I don't want to necessarily say they're all of the dark, because they're not. There's a lot that are of the light, but they're mischievous, and sometimes they're scary and can be mean. Not all of them. I don't want to put an umbrella over every winged fae, because that is not the case for every winged fae. But for a big handful of them, That's the case, and that is why our fae were so, they didn't want to talk about it. So I just wanted to mention that. So, and I just want to make sure the audience understands that does not mean every single fairy that has wings is dark. No, that's not the case. But apparently, it's more often the case than not.
You know what? A couple final notes. That's a great additional bit of information to really seize on, because it's important. Again, going back to Alvera, she was saying like, yeah, like this elf I'm talking to says like there are some winged fae around, but most of them aren't. And I thought that was just such a strange answer 4 months ago. But now I'm hearing it again from you. Also, my very first guest, Ron, was like offline. He's like, I just want you to know fairies are vegan. And that was my very first episode back in February. And I was like, cool, I'm vegan. And he's like, oh, that's why they like you. And I was like, huh? And he sort of has a couple times when I've talked to him said like, oh, the fairies are like fully in your house. Like he's like, I think they're eating when you eat. And he's describing like how when he is nurturing his fairies in his home, like a fairy nursery, he also is vegetarian. He eats a little bit of fish, but he says he's primarily vegan. He says the fairies don't like it when I eat fish, but I need it for some human reason. Ron's a really interesting guy. He was a municipal works guy. He like, you just think about like a guy working for, and he found fairies through meditation. But this conversation with you like really wraps back up so many things that Ron has told me. This narrative that's developing of people that are in contact with the Fae is possibly the most fascinating level of this whole thing. Like seeing them is one thing, but now we're getting into like a whole affirmation, confirmation, emerging narrative from disparate people. I mean, you're not Ron. You're like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's so much separation of experience to arrive at these similar truths, Alvera included, who, I've said that person's name like 5 times because they've been so patient, and I've not been sure about putting that episode out, but now I'm definitely going to. So that's why I'm feeling like that retroactive gratitude for that truth shared there too, that I'm now starting to see was deeper truth than I understood at first. This has been great for me. This is really cool. And you've answered so many questions. I think because usually, the format of the show is to give the guest the last word, I'm going to stick with that. And why don't we do it like in reverse order? So if you want, Therese, you can give the first last word, and then Bonnie to finish off. I'll just finish by saying this before we get there, okay? Everybody listening who's had an encounter, for those that are also in direct contact with the Fae in the way that we're talking about here today, any vegan fam out there who just want to shout out some love, it's all good. Anybody who wants to talk with me about how to go vegan, or Bonnie or Therese, I bet we'd all be happy to talk about that. Just shoot us a line. I'm going to keep you guys anonymous, but you know what I'm saying. Just let's talk veganism if you want. Encounters at Fascinating Fae is where you can drop me a line about your experiences or any of this other subject matter that we're covering here today. And you can check out the website at fascinatingfae.com, where we will put some liner notes. If you feel so generous as to share any of these photos, that's something that would go up there. And if not, don't expect them, which is why I haven't asked about them till now. With all that said, huge thanks to Bonnie and Therese on behalf of all of our human and non-human listeners tuning into Fascinating Fae tonight. Without further ado, Therese, I'll give you that first last word.
Yeah, the only last word I'd like to say is to remind everybody to be compassionate and conscious of the unseen as you are out and about doing your yard work and your daily activities, because there is so much more there than meets the eye. And if we can all keep that in mind, then this world will be a better place for not just humans, but for all beings, seen and unseen.
Thank you so much, Therese. And Bonnie, if you could do that as well, and if you can just at the end drop your socials again so everyone can find you, please.
Well, the one thing I would like everyone to know is that as we have learned over the years, the Fae serve as a template for what we are trying to do as a civilization and what we actually must do at this point, which is to live with kindness and love for one another as the primary value that we live. So the more that we can learn about them, the more we will bring it out to everyone. And what I really want to do is to help people to understand that they have a lot more power than they think they have, and that there are wonderful things out there. And just because they can't see them, that doesn't mean that they're not right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that we had this audience, and I'm hoping that we can let everyone know that we have some wonderful, wonderful people around us who we just can't see at the moment, but they can teach us a lot.
Yes, and please visit The Fairies Are Real, The River of Truth on YouTube to learn more.
Bonnie, Therese, thank you for this uplifting conversation. And again, on behalf of all of our human and non-human listeners tuning into Fascinating Fae tonight, this has been one for the books. Thank you both for being here so much.
Thank you.
If I was a holy man, I would spread the good word that every single human soul is whole divine. But still I'm just a lonely man, though I've got the glimpse of truth. Within this brain and body I'm defined. I see the people are walking in the world, they're wandering around aimlessly. They chase the mighty dollar till they die. They need the money to make it marvelous. They're molding us too much like sheep. A multitude of madness lies we buy. I wanna live in a world where we take care of each other, hold and embrace and share with one another. And we send prayers to the others, holding the space for them to recover, so they can discover their mother, patiently waiting, sisters and brothers. It's time to rise from the slumber, wake from the dream, and learn how to love her now. For the day has come to turn this ship around. If I had a time machine, well, I'd go back and check the scene and dance along the pages of the past. But no, I wouldn't change a thing, for what it's bright it's meant to bring. And who am I to judge the master plan? But in times like these I'm questioning why we live so desperately, scared to bat an eye at the hourglass. With our head in the sand we're wrestling with questions that need answering. They say the guru lies within you, just have to ask. I wanna live in a world where we take care of each other, hold and embrace and share with one another. And we'll send prayers to the others, holding the space for them to recover, so they can discover their mother, patiently waiting, sisters and brothers. It's time to wake from the slumber, rise from the dream, and learn how to love her now. For the day has come to turn this ship around. I wanna live in a world where we take care of each other, hold and embrace and share with one another. And we'll send prayers to the others, holding the space for them to recover, so they can discover their mother, patiently waiting, sisters and brothers. It's time to wake from the slumber, rise from the dream, and learn how to love her now. For the day has come to turn this ship around.